I was working the front desk at a small hotel in Prague when an American family walked in carrying 12 luggage bags for a 3-night stay. The dad immediately asked where the ice machine was. I pointed to the small freezer in the breakfast area. He looked confused. "No, the ice machine? You know, the thing that makes ice cubes all day?" I explained we don't really have those here. He stared at me like I'd just told him we don't have electricity. "You've already seen it. I don't tell travel stories. I decode behavior. Most people share culture shocks. I map cultural systems. If that kind of insight clicks for you, this is where you subscribe." "How do you drink water then?" he asked, genuinely concerned. His wife chimed in, "Do you just drink it warm?" I had to explain that Europeans typically drink water at room temperature, and we don't fill entire cups with ice before adding 2 sips of actual beverage. The dad shook his head slowly and muttered, "That's rough, man. That's really rough." My coworker in Amsterdam told me about an American tourist who got genuinely upset that stores were closed on Sunday. Not just mildly annoyed, but actually angry. He'd planned his entire day around shopping and couldn't understand why a whole country would just decide to shut down. "Don't you people like money?" he asked the hotel staff. They tried explaining that Sunday is traditionally a rest day across much of Europe, and that workers deserve time with their families. He responded by saying that in America, stores stay open because freedom doesn't take days off. He ended up sitting in his hotel room all day, ordering room service, still confused about why an entire nation would choose rest over profit. Then there was the woman in Florence who asked her tour guide why all the statues were naked. The guide explained it was classical art, celebrating the human form as the Greeks and Romans did. She nodded, then asked, "But when will they put clothes on them? For the kids?" The guide paused, realizing she thought the nudity was temporary. "Ma'am, these statues are over 500 years old. They've been like this the whole time." She looked genuinely shocked. "And nobody complains?" The guide smiled and said, "Well, you're the first in about 5 centuries." She spent the rest of the tour trying to position her children away from any artwork showing skin, which in Florence meant she basically walked them through the city backwards. I watched an American couple in Vienna argue with a waiter because their meal took 40 minutes to arrive. They kept saying they had things to do, places to see. The waiter calmly explained that dining in Europe is an experience, not a race. "But we're hungry now," the husband said. The waiter replied, "Yes, and the food is being prepared correctly now. Would you prefer it fast or good?" The wife said, "Both." The waiter just laughed and walked away. When the food finally came, they ate it in 11 minutes and left, confused why everyone else was still sitting and talking hours after finishing their meals. They never understood that for Europeans, the meal is the event. Eating is just part of it. I was working at a cafe in Paris when an American ordered coffee at 9 p.m. Normal enough. But then he asked for it to go, in a paper cup, to walk around with. My manager looked at him like he'd requested a live chicken. "Monsieur, we are not McDonald's," she said. He laughed, thinking she was joking. She was not joking. He explained he wanted to drink it while walking along the Seine. She explained that coffee in France is meant to be enjoyed sitting down, preferably with conversation or a book. He said, "But I can do both, walk and drink," she replied. "Yes, physically you can. But why would you?" He left with his coffee in a real cup, sat on a bench, and drank it there. Later, I saw him toss the cup in a trash bin. He looked around, proud of himself for adapting. But he'd missed the whole point. The coffee was supposed to last 30 minutes, not 3. My friend worked at a pizzeria in Rome and told me about the American who asked for a pizza to share with his girlfriend. The chef made 1 large pizza as requested. When it arrived, the guy asked for 2 plates. Fine. Then he asked for a knife. The server brought one, assuming he'd cut a slice. Instead, he cut the pizza into tiny squares like it was a casserole and started eating it with a fork. The entire restaurant went silent. Old Italian men stopped mid-conversation to watch. One nonna actually gasped. The server leaned over and whispered, "Signore, you can use your hands." The American smiled and said, "Oh, I know, but this is cleaner." The chef came out of the kitchen, looked at the table, then looked at the server, then walked back inside without saying a word. To this day, that pizzeria has a photo of the cut-up pizza hanging in the kitchen as a reminder of dark times. N. American woman in Greece got frustrated because restaurants didn't open for dinner until 8 p.m. She was hungry at 5:30 and couldn't understand why everywhere was closed. "Don't Greek people eat?" she asked a local shopkeeper. He explained that Greeks eat late because the culture values long, relaxed evening meals. She said, "But I'm on vacation. I eat when I want." He suggested she buy snacks and wait. She replied, "I shouldn't have to wait. The customer is always right." He smiled and said, "Maybe in America. Here, the culture is always right." She ended up eating gas station chips and crackers in her hotel, then complained online that Greece has terrible food options because nothing was open at dinner time. She'd been standing 50 feet from a dozen world-class tavernas, just 4 hours too early. I once saw an American family in Spain ask for separate checks at a group dinner. There were 8 of them. The waiter's face went completely blank. In Spain, splitting bills item by item isn't common, especially for large groups. People usually just divide the total or take turns paying. The dad explained that in America, everyone pays for exactly what they ordered. The waiter said, "Yes, but you are not in America. You are in Spain, at a Spanish restaurant, with a Spanish waiter who does not want to do math for 30 minutes. The mom offered to calculate it herself. The waiter sighed, brought the single check, and walked away. The family spent 20 minutes with a calculator, Venmo, and a notepad, figuring out who owed what. By the time they finished, the restaurant had served and cleared 3 other tables. The waiter never came back to collect payment. He sent the busboy. An American couple in Germany ordered water at a restaurant and got sparkling water by default. They sent it back. "We wanted regular water," they said. The waiter brought tap water. They looked horrified. "No, like bottled water, but flat." The waiter explained that in Germany, sparkling is standard, and tap water is free, but not usually offered in restaurants. They asked why. He said, "Because sparkling water has minerals and is considered more sophisticated." The husband said, "But it tastes like TV static." The waiter paused. "That is a new description." The wife asked if they could just have water like normal people drink. The waiter replied, "You are drinking water like normal people drink. You're just not in your normal place." They ended up ordering Coke. It came in a tiny 200 milliliters glass bottle and cost €4. They drank it in silence, mourning the loss of free refills. I worked at a bakery in Copenhagen when an American asked why we didn't have bagels. I explained that bagels aren't a traditional Danish food. He said, "Yeah, but you have bread. Just make it round with a hole." I told him it doesn't work that way. He insisted it did. "Bread is bread," he said. I brought out a Danish pastry and explained the difference in technique, ingredients, and cultural origins. He looked at the pastry and said, "See? You already make round stuff. Just skip the sugar and boom, bagel." My coworker, who'd been listening, finally said, "By that logic, a car is just a bike with extra wheels." The American thought about it, then said, "I mean, kind of, yeah." We stopped trying to explain after that. He bought 3 pastries, ate them all in 10 minutes, and left happy. Sometimes understanding isn't the goal. Sometimes sugar is enough. I was working at a bookstore in London when an American struck up a loud conversation with a stranger on the tube. Not just talking, but laughing, asking personal questions, discussing his job, his family, his opinions on British television. The entire car was silent except for him. People stared at the floor, the ceiling, anywhere but at him. The stranger he was talking to gave one-word answers and slowly inched away. When they got off at the same stop, the American said, "Nice meeting you, mate," using the word mate like he'd unlocked a secret code. The British man nodded, smiled tightly, and speed-walked in the opposite direction. Later, the American told me everyone in London was super friendly because one guy talked to him for 15 minutes. I didn't have the heart to tell him that guy was just too polite to tell him to be quiet. My cousin worked at a community pool in Sweden and said an American family showed up wearing shoes inside. Not just in the entrance, but all the way to the pool deck. Someone politely asked them to remove their shoes. The mom said, "Why? The floor looks clean." The staff explained that in Sweden, wearing shoes indoors is considered rude and unsanitary. People walk through streets, bathrooms, dirt, and then you want to bring that inside? The dad argued that in America, everyone wears shoes indoors, and it's fine. The staff member replied, "Yes, and in America, everyone also wears shoes on their beds in TV shows, which we find horrifying." The mom looked offended. "We don't do that in real life," she said. The staff member shrugged. "Then maybe take off your shoes in real life here." They complied, but complained the whole time about how cold the floor was, which is, of course, why Swedes wear indoor slippers. But nobody offered that information at that point. An American tourist in Japan asked a shopkeeper why everyone was so quiet on the train. The shopkeeper explained that in Japan, public spaces are meant to be peaceful, and talking loudly on trains is considered inconsiderate. The tourist said, "But how do people communicate?" The shopkeeper said, "They wait until they arrive, or they text." The tourist looked amazed. "That sounds so lonely." The shopkeeper smiled. "That sounds so respectful." Later that day, the same tourist got on a train and took a phone call. A businesswoman near him gave him a look that could freeze oceans. He quickly whispered, "I'll call you back," and hung up. When he got off, he told his friend, "Everyone here is so serious. Nobody talks or has fun." His friend, who'd been to Japan before, said, "They have fun, just not at your volume." I was working at a library in Dublin when an American asked if he could eat his sandwich inside. I told him no, food isn't allowed in the library. He asked why. I explained that crumbs attract pests and the smell distracts others. He said, "It's just a sandwich. I'll be quiet." I said, "The sandwich won't be." He looked confused. I clarified, "Food has a smell. Smells travel. People are reading." He still didn't get it. "In America, you can eat in libraries. I do it all the time." I said, "That's nice. In Ireland, you can't." He huffed, went outside, ate in under 4 minutes, came back in, and asked if we had any books about Irish history. I pointed him to the section. He spent 3 hours reading silently, completely focused. Turns out, he could follow the rules. He just needed a reason to care first. And apparently, old rebellion stories were that reason. An American woman in Norway got visibly uncomfortable during a work meeting because nobody was smiling. She later asked her colleague if everyone was angry with her. The colleague laughed and said, "No, Norwegians just don't smile for no reason." "But smiling is polite," the woman said. The colleague replied, "Smiling without meaning is fake. We smile when we're happy, not when we're performing happiness." The American said that sounded depressing. The Norwegian said, "Actually, it's freeing. You always know where you stand." The American tried to adjust but kept smiling out of habit. After a week, her coworkers started smiling back, not because they were happy, but because they found her American optimism oddly charming. She never realized they were smiling at her, not with her, but she felt welcomed anyway, which was the point. I once watched an American man in Finland try to make small talk with a cashier. He asked how her day was going, if she liked her job, what her weekend plans were. She answered each question with one word. Fine, yes, home. He kept pushing. Do you have hobbies? Do you like living here? What's your favorite food? She finally looked him in the eye and said, I am scanning your groceries, not attending your therapy session. He went silent. When he left, he told his wife, That lady was so rude. His wife, who was Finnish, said, No, you were intrusive. She doesn't know you. Why would she share her life? He thought about it. I was just being friendly. She said, You were being American. Here, friendly means respectful distance first. He didn't fully understand, but he stopped asking cashiers about their childhoods after that. Growth takes many forms. I was working at a train station in Brussels when an American asked why his ticket didn't have a seat number. I explained that regional trains in Belgium don't assign seats. You just sit wherever. He said, But what if someone takes my spot? I said, Then you sit somewhere else. He looked genuinely anxious. But what if all the seats are taken? I said, Then you stand, or wait for the next train. He couldn't process this. In his mind, a ticket meant a guaranteed seat, like on an airplane. I explained that trains come every 20 minutes, and it's rare for them to be full outside rush hour. He bought 3 extra tickets, thinking more tickets meant more seat options. When I told him that's not how it works, he accused me of lying to steal his money. I refunded 2 tickets. He got on the train, found an empty row, and sat down. He looked around confused, waiting for someone to kick him out of their seat. Nobody did. He rode in suspicious silence the whole way. An American in Germany complained that the date on his hotel reservation was wrong. It said 12/10/2025, but he'd booked for October 12th. The receptionist explained that in Europe, dates are written day, month, year, so that was indeed October 12th. He said, That doesn't make sense. The month should come first. The receptionist said, Why? He paused. Because that's the order. She said, The order you're used to. Here, we go smallest to largest. Day, month, year. It's logical. He argued, That month, day, year was more logical because you say October 12th. Why? She replied, You say that in English. We don't speak English here as a first language. He stood there, realizing he'd never considered that date formats might be cultural, not universal. He checked in quietly, then spent 10 minutes at the elevator trying to figure out why the button started at 0 instead of 1. That was a separate breakdown. I watched an American family in France panic because their GPS said their destination was 50 kilometers away, and they didn't know how far that was. The dad kept saying, Is that like 50 miles? More? Less? The mom Googled it. It's about 31 miles, she announced. The kids asked why Europe doesn't just use miles. The dad said, Because they like being difficult. A French driver overhearing this said, No, because we like using a system that makes sense. Your inches, feet, yards, miles. Why? Just add a 0. Meter, kilometer. Easy. The dad replied, But we grew up with miles. It's natural to us. The French driver said, And we grew up with kilometers. That's how culture works. You adapt or you struggle. The family spent the rest of their trip converting every distance, temperature, and weight back to imperial units, essentially experiencing Europe through a permanent math quiz. They left exhausted. An American woman in the Netherlands tried to pay with a €100 note at a small cafe. The cashier said they didn't accept bills that large. She got upset. It's legal money. You have to take it. The cashier explained that small businesses often don't carry enough change for large bills. and it's common to use cards or smaller notes. She said, "In America, cash is cash." The cashier said, "In the Netherlands, cards are king. Most people don't even carry cash anymore." She argued that she didn't trust cards. The cashier said, "That's fine, but we don't trust mystery bills we can't verify or break." She asked to speak to a manager. The manager came out, looked at the €100 note, looked at her €3 coffee, and simply said, "No." She left without the coffee, convinced she'd been scammed. Later, she posted online about how Dutch cafes refuse to do business. The comments explained she'd basically tried to buy gum with a $100 bill at a food truck. She never replied. I was working at a pharmacy in Italy when an American asked for Tylenol. I asked if he meant paracetamol. He said, "No, Tylenol, for headaches." I explained that Tylenol is just a brand name for paracetamol, and here it's sold under different brands. He didn't believe me. "Tylenol is Tylenol," he insisted. I showed him a box of paracetamol with the same active ingredient. He squinted at it. "This looks fake." I assured him it wasn't. He asked why Italy didn't just sell Tylenol. I said, "Why would we? We have our own brands." He said, "Because everyone knows Tylenol." I replied, "Everyone in America knows Tylenol. Here, everyone knows Tachipirina." He bought it reluctantly, convinced it wouldn't work as well. 3 hours later, he came back and sheepishly admitted his headache was gone. He still didn't apologize for implying our medicine was counterfeit, but he did buy 2 more boxes before leaving the country. Baby steps. An American couple in Portugal got frustrated because their Airbnb didn't have a dryer. They asked the host where it was. She said most Portuguese people air dry their clothes. The wife said, "But that takes forever." The host said, "It takes a few hours in the sun, sometimes a day if it's humid." The husband said, "We have plans tomorrow. We need clean clothes tonight." The host offered to show them a laundromat. They asked why she didn't just buy a dryer. She said, "Because I don't need one. The sun is free." They couldn't wrap their heads around it. That night, they hung their clothes on the balcony like instructed, but brought them in after an hour because they weren't dry yet. The next morning, they complained the clothes were still damp. The host checked and realized they'd hung everything inside out. In a dark corner, with no airflow, she rehung them correctly. By noon, everything was dry. The couple admitted it worked, but said they'd never do it at home. "Too much effort," they said. The host just smiled. I was working at a tourist information center in Edinburgh when an American asked me where the best, authentic European experience was. I asked what he meant. He said, "You know, like the real Europe, not the touristy stuff." I said, "You're in Europe right now. This is real." He shook his head. "No, I mean like where locals go, the hidden spots." I suggested a pub 3 streets over. He asked if they spoke English there. I said, "Yes, it's Scotland." He said, "But like, do they speak normal English or Scottish English?" I stared at him. "Scottish English is normal English here. You're the one with the accent." He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. He went to the pub, came back an hour later, and said he couldn't understand half of what people said. "It's like a different language," he said. I replied, "Welcome to Europe. Every 50 miles, something changes. That's the authentic experience." He seemed disappointed. I think he wanted Europe to be a theme park with subtitles. A German friend told me about an American who got upset that nobody at Oktoberfest spoke English well enough to explain the beer menu. My friend said, "You're in Munich, at a German festival, drinking German beer. Why would we translate everything for you?" The American said, "Because tourism." My friend replied, "Tourism is you visiting our culture, not us translating our culture into yours." This is what I track full-time. Not just funny moments, but how belief systems clash in real time. Most people miss what these stories reveal about perspective. Subscribers don't. The American ended up pointing at a random beer, drinking it, loving it, and then asking what it was called. My friend told him he couldn't pronounce it. He took a photo of the label instead and showed it to bartenders for the rest of the trip. Communication evolved. Here's the thing about Americans abroad. The confusion isn't malicious. It's just thorough. They arrive expecting the world to work like home, and when it doesn't, they troubleshoot it like a software bug. "Why don't you have ice?" isn't an insult. It's a genuine question. They're not trying to be difficult. They just genuinely believe their way is the default, and everything else is a variation. And to be fair, most countries feel that way about their own systems. The difference is that American culture is so loud, so exported, so globally visible through movies and media, that Americans sometimes forget not everyone lives in the movie. But here's what I respect. Most of them adjust. Maybe not immediately, maybe not gracefully, but they try. They eat the sparkling water. They take off their shoes. They lower their voices on the train. They learn that butter comes unsalted in Europe and adapt. They stop asking for ranch dressing everywhere. Well, some of them do. Others just pack it in their luggage, which honestly is very on-brand. The point is, culture shock goes both ways. Europeans are just quieter about it. If you found yourself nodding through this, not laughing at them, but learning from them, you're already part of the mindset this channel was built for. Subscribing just keeps you in the conversation. And trust me, these stories never stop